Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. All hail the king. The Hall of the Iron Throne was packed with the surviving nobility of King's Landing, joined by many martial lords and those of the Stormlands. Taine, rising from her gilded seat, positioned to the right of the Iron Throne itself, reserved for the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, didn't care about most of them, just empty faces. There were those that mattered, though. Sir Davos Seaworth, Lord Randyll Tarley, Lord Petyr Baelish, and the man of the hour, Lord Jon Stark. Given his position, he stood at the front of the throng of courtiers, joining Taine in not bending the knee, merely bowing their heads in respect as Stannis walked in, Kingsguard trailing behind him. Presenting Stannis of House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals, Rhoynar, and First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm. Long may he reign, the crowd chanted after Littlefinger recited the titles. Rise, Stannis barked, walking up the dais towards the Iron Throne. He sent Taine a warm smile, one she reciprocated, before both sat down together. Lord Baelish, as Hand of the King, took his place standing to Stannis' left. What is the only item of business, Lord Hand? Stannis knew. He'd called for this session of court after all. But even Ty knew the formalities had to be kept. Clearing his throat, Littlefinger bore no demeanor but one obsequiously in support of his king. Your Grace, Queen Daenerys Targaryen of Meereen has landed at Duskendale and begins her journey to King's Landing. Tywin saw many uneasy, unsure of what to say, or the context. It was honestly quite amusing to see them squirm. When she met Jon Stark's eyes, they reflected the same thing. However, Stannis broke it by clapping his hands together. Wonderful. It wasn't long before the entire court was clapping. The mood changed in an instant towards one mirroring that of the king. It is my joy to announce that Daenerys is arriving to renounce her bid for the Iron Throne. In return, she shall be named my heir. Peace is at hand, my lords and ladies. All the sacrifices we have made for the good of the realm are not in vain, and the entirety of the Seven Kingdoms can focus itself on the true threat. Well said, Your Grace, Littlefinger remarked. Nodding, Stannis rose. The parley will be in a few days at the Dragon Pit. I expect all of you to be there to witness history, that is all. With a flourish of the trumpets, the king departed, everyone bowing as he left. Rising herself, Taine approached a softly smiling Jon Stark. Congratulations, my lord, she said to him. Jon took her hand in his and kissed the back of it. The congratulations belong to us all, Your Grace, not simply myself. Yet you were the driver behind all of this, if I recall correctly. You must be rather modest. She chuckled, eyeing him closely. Aye, he was very happy over this. Too happy. I'd hope that you ensure this doesn't fall through, Lord Stark. As do I, Your Grace. There is much riding on this. At that moment, Taine felt a sudden lurch in her stomach. For all of us. Jon nodded, kissed her hand once more, and then walked to Ser Davos. A relief to the queen. Trying to maintain a regal demeanor until she was out of sight. Once she turned the corner, Taine broke out into a run. Nearly tripping over her dress, she burst into the privy and fell to her knees, voiding her stomach of the light lunch she had eaten only hours before. She cursed to herself, keeping her head hovering over the hole through the bench, feeling her knees biting upon the rough stone. 7 hells! 7 fucking hells, she murmured over and over, trying not to retch, to fight the madness of her churning stomach. The privy door creaked open as someone knelt beside her. Taine felt hands pull back her hair. In all fairness, I expected Nymeria to be the first. Taine snorted, chuckling dryly. She was always the most wanton of us. She suddenly went green and retched a little more. Fuck, I hate this. I know, Elia spoke, her one companion of Dorne she had left. Does his grace know? A nod. Yes, only him and the Maester of Storm's End, who is loyal to him. He hasn't told the small council yet. Is there a reason? Mayhaps he wants to announce it at the parley. Elia pursed her lips. That is a possibility. They were silent. A few more dry heaves until her stomach settled down. This means your fate is tied with Stannis. Taine looked up at her sister. I know. Unless you wish to repudiate our oath of fealty to Daenerys, I suggest you make sure this peace is signed and put into effect for all our sakes. She groaned but nodded. Now, let's get you presentable for his grace, your grace. Her eyes narrowed. Shut up. Elia giggled at her glare. As expected, her husband was in his solar looking over dispatches, though the frown planted to his lips curled into a smile upon seeing her. "Dearest wife," Stannis said warmly, rising from his seat as soon as they were alone. Tyene smiled back, regarding him as he hurried to her without a limp. Accepting the kiss he pressed to her lips. "I am glad you are well, husband." Stannis lowered a hand to her still flat stomach. "And how is the fawn?" His voice was only a little over a whisper, but filled with affection. "7 hells upon my stomach, but otherwise fine," she laughed. "The maesters state she's no larger than a pea." "She?" Stannis rested his hands on her waist. "And you are sure my son and heir is a girl?" Tyene didn't like his dismissive tone, but such was quite low on the list of concerns she felt she needed to worry about. Just a feeling, mother's intuition, and all that. Mine always knew that she was bearing my father's daughters. Aye, Oberyn Martell, quite proud of his daughters, and until I met you, I never saw why. He kissed her cheek before walking back to his chair. Now I am more appreciative. Knowing such was quite loving praise from the normally taciturn Stag King, Tyene took a seat for herself, folding her hands on her lap. Here's hoping Jon Stark and Daenerys Targaryen bear a son. Stannis raised his brow, but ultimately sighed. I suppose I haven't been secretive of my desire for Jon Stark to be the father of my future good child, a Goodson and king, if your intuition is correct. He leaned back in his seat, massaging the bridge of his nose. I cannot trust anyone else besides him to be her husband and consort. Anyone else might break the treaty to gain the advantage, marry the Targaryen heir to some wealthy upstart from the Free Cities or Reach in order to gain more coin. Jon, I trust him. Most of Tyene trusted Jon Stark as well, since Daenerys seemed to, but there was more at stake now. The little child in her belly deserved more certainty. Have you considered the thought that Jon Stark is in love with the Dragon Queen? Tyene asked. That perhaps that could cloud his judgment? I have considered the likelihood that he does marry the Dragon Queen and begets the one who marries our child, and it truly solves all problems. If he loves her, then all the best for him. She quirked her head, not even having to verbalize her question. And no, I am not worried. I have known Jon Stark for a long time. He would never betray me, Stannis scoffed. How sure are you? Stannis eyed her somewhat angrily. Do not speak ill of him. He is one of my most trusted confidants, practically the son I never had. There was a rare grief in his voice. Tyene held up her hands. I mean no disrespect to you or him. She caressed his shoulder, then moved her hands to her stomach. I just have more at risk now. It would be unfortunate for you to fall into a trap. That would affect me and our child as well. Stannis nodded. Worry not. I ponder on the health and well-being of that child in your belly more than little else. That child is everything. Then make sure the child and I are protected, Tyene replied. There is little else more important to me, my queen. Stannis rose and stepped over to her. He gently planted a kiss on her forehead. Something about Tyene had softened him, arose a different side of him, perhaps. He cared for her deeper than he thought he might. I would not fret, my dear. There will be peace soon, and then we can focus on the real war. Biting her lip, Tyene nodded. I pray for peace every day. Thankfully, her stomach had settled as she slipped into bed. Normally, Stannis would join her. Domestic bliss and a lifetime of abstention had finally brought relief to his wounded leg and left him not repulsive as she worried when he took her to wed. Tyene had grown to somewhat enjoy their encounters, especially as she quickened. But tonight, it was simply her, the diligent King Stannis, committed to his duties, regardless of his pregnant, lonely wife. But Tyene had duties, too. Duties to her husband. Duties to Dorne. Duties to the alliance her mother chose to make with Daenerys and that her cousin confirmed. Duties to her child, growing in her belly. She wanted Daenerys to win, but also wanted Stannis not to lose. Her child could go on to sit on the Iron Throne. Stannis would hold to the agreement out of love for Jon, while Daenerys would do the same, either from principle or because she loved Jon as well. Her fist clenched. Only if the peace fell through would her child be harmed. And whomever would sabotage the peace, her knives were still sharp, and Stannis did not know where she hid them on her body. Unlike at Dragonstone, her feet met a hard wooden jetty rather than the swirling surf of the beach. Daenerys wished she could have ridden Drogon from Dragonstone to the port city of Duskendale, but there would be a time and a place for intimidation. Here she was greeting a sworn lord. Time to be more congenial. Your Grace, Lord Riker and his family bent the knee to her at the base of the jetty, the head of a large welcoming party including men-at-arms and servants. Duskendale is yours. Rise, Lord Riker, and thank you. Striding forward to a familiar face, she tossed pretenses away and wrapped Grey Worm in a hug. Thank you for holding the line, Turganudo. My queen is too kind, Grey Worm replied in Valyrian. Jorah the Andal. Tyrion Lannister, he spoke, smile dropping at the second person standing behind Daenerys. While Jorah merely nodded, Tyrion's lips curled in an awkward smile. Grey Worm. Greetings taken care of, they all ambled towards the keep that overlooked the city's harbor. I still think this is a mistake. Your opinion is noted, Daenerys spoke, not wanting to have this conversation. I read the draft agreement aboard the ship. If there was any loose contract of effective slavery that Littlefinger wrote, this is... Anything you can say here has already been said, Lord Tyrion. Enough, she snapped, and the imp went quiet, looking off into the distance with a barely hidden sulk. He'll be grumpy for days. Daenerys turned to Ser Jorah. I hope you aren't one to tell me I'm making a mistake. Not a mistake, more concerns. She rolled her eyes. Even now, as she walked between rows of assembled bannermen of House Riker, Jorah would insist on speaking his mind. Khaleesi, I cannot refrain from my worries. His voice was a whisper. Daenerys knew more than anyone that even whispers could be heard. In Dothraki, Ser Jorah. Better a tongue no one else knows. Missandei would arrive the next day while her blood riders weren't close enough to hear. She had Jorah's sword for protection. He nodded. All right. He'd changed since returning to life, but his devotion to her was still the same. Rock solid. I read the preliminary deal sent by Lord Stark. I do not like it. Nor do I, but I believe Lord Varys once told me that the best compromises are ones that leave a bit of a bad taste in the mouths of all sides. Truth be told, only Jon's insistence on peace and the desire to be that merciful Misa to Westeros as she was in Essos were what drove Daenerys to accept. I will stay here as the official heir enough so that the people know me. Once Stannis dies, I will return securely in my place. That could be years from now. Enough time to finish what I started in Essos. Daenerys didn't fail to grasp the silver lining. While Jaina Vihasar in Volantis promised gradual abolition, there were other places that hadn't done that. Norvos was particularly brutal to their slaves, from what she heard. You are worried he will repudiate. Stannis, he is very rigid in his honor, but the treaty specifies many things that could nullify it if you don't act carefully, thus forcing you to start over with the conquest. She looked to her side, raising her brow at him. Do you have something specific you wish to broach to me? A part of this deal consists of you pairing your child with his, Jorah asked. It does. What of the witch, your grace, Jorah said quietly, even double-checking no one was listening in. The curse. Daenerys' eyes wandered away. She tried to keep her mind from remembering that day. She certainly didn't appreciate thinking of it then. No one knows of what happened, Ser Jorah, she replied, trying to keep the pain from her voice. Not even Jon. So it will stay that way? Yes, Dany said, plainly. I still don't trust him as you do, but from what I can see, he disbelieved the curse. She closed her eyes. That is his prerogative, but he wasn't there when the witch gave it. Finality in her statement. What if you cannot produce an heir? An immediate response did not come to Dany's mind. After a few moments of silence, I'd assume Stannis would be long dead by then, so perhaps it won't matter. You'd betray the deal? Jorah frowned. I don't think I could walk away from my birthright twice, Dany sighed. But if the witch's curse proves to be insurmountable, I won't have many other options. I'd hope that you're not cursed, your grace, Jorah said. Your child, it's a nice thought. Dany allowed herself to ponder on the notion of a child. A child with Jon, only Jon. It was certainly more pleasant than remembering the treachery of Mirri Maz Duur. Yes, it is. The smile would probably come to haunt her, but she wouldn't deny herself this indulgence. Of the family, the reality was likely to deny her. Lord Riker gladly provided the best chambers in his keep for Daenerys, his own, it seemed. Daenerys was normally not inclined to usurp the rightful chambers of the Lord of the Keep, but she was tired, and only the Lord's chambers provided a private bath for her to use. No one would think any less of her for indulging, and it seemed to put the Lord to ease. Memories of the last time a Targaryen had dwelt in Duskendale ran deep, even if it had been her father. Barristan claimed it had been this that turned Aerys from paranoid and mercurial into mad and fire-obsessed. So personal comfort was what she needed to escape those thoughts. With Missandei still absent, Daenerys was to be attended to by her ward and hostage, Lynesse Hightower. She wasn't Missandei, a close friend who knew her inside and out, but competent in duties as a handmaiden she was. Easy, Lady Lynesse, Daenerys insisted as the girl tugged at her braids. Perhaps she was just a little unused to dealing with her new queen. A blush came over her comely face. Forgive me, my queen. Slower this time, Lyness gently worked at the silver locks, removing them from their knots. If I may ask, why do you wear such complex braids? I mean, you'd look beautiful with your hair down. Jon certainly loved her hair. Let down. It's a Dothraki practice. One braid for each victory. Many braids, many victories. Daenerys smiled pridefully. Kessa, many victories and no defeats. Even being captured by the Dothraki had led to a victory for her. She was silent for a moment, finishing the last of the braids before grabbing a brush. This time it felt soothing, her hair being brushed. Jorah was your companion during it all, correct? Tensing a bit, Daenerys sighed. Most of it, at least. For some of it, I didn't trust him. From what I heard, there was no one he was more loyal to than you. Not even me. I can see it in his eyes, the way he looks at you. Daenerys stared at her through the silver mirror. He loves you. To which you'd know a lot. Lyness was silent. He knows how to fall for women who cannot love him back. I did love him, your grace. Not enough to demand the worst of him. She reacted with a raised voice. I didn't ever ask him to do what he did. Her eyes widened and she averted her gaze. Your grace, forgive me. But Daenerys shook her head. No, I want you to be frank with me. She turned, standing to face the slender woman. Lyness was barely any taller than her, and her hair was the lightest of blonde. If not for the green eyes, they would look like sisters to any onlooker. Jorah was destroyed by you, both his reputation in tatters and his life near forfeit. Why did you let him do this? Why did you wish his hand in marriage if you knew him a minor lord? Biting her lip, Lyness sighed. Love the matters of the heart are more vicious than any battle. Sometimes you find yourself swooning over someone where nothing but the difficulty will follow. She set the brush down. For what it's worth, I never regretted my life with Jorah. He was a sweet man and made me happy. I only wish it could have worked. Daenerys wished to berate her more to protect Jorah on his behalf. Her faithful bear simply avoided Lyness and she him, but she couldn't. Her words were simply the truth, ones Daenerys had endured personally. All right, she wished not to continue this conversation. Is my bath ready? Lyness nodded, heated to a scalding warmth, as you requested. She appeared apprehensive. Will that be all right for you, your grace? A smile. The blood of the dragon requires heat, Lady Lyness. Without the heat of her lover in bed, she would not give up the flawed substitute of her baths. Alone she would be while bathing. Missandei joined her when she was here, as did Jon a few times when together, her favorite memories of bathing. But here there was no one. Shucking off her gown, Daenerys lowered herself into the bath, sighing in contentment at the searing heat. Anyone else would find their skin blistering and burning, screaming in agony, but to the queen it was only a pleasant warmth, a gentle blanket wrapping around her. Setting her head down against the side, she resisted the urge to sleep. Sometimes you find yourself swooning over someone where nothing but difficulty will follow. Lyness couldn't have hit the nail closer to the head with such a description, especially since she knew naught of Jon. Gods, with all that was transpiring, Daenerys had picked the hardest man to love, if not their improbable connection, then for the impossible circumstances. Fate decreed them to despise each other, to fight. Who were Targaryens but above man or god, and those that lived through the icy winters were those keen on challenging the elements as well. Surrounded by the soothing heat, Daenerys allowed her mind to wander, allowed herself the luxury of happiness. Damn her later, but mayhaps she could have joy with Jon. An end worthy of the songs, the life she desired, yet never thought she could have. She'd regret it when it inevitably came crashing down, but Daenerys didn't stop herself from dreaming. Soon, Jon would be in her arms, and it would all be over. There was only one manner in which to react to the news, and that was a visible sense of joy. Your Grace, my deepest congratulations on these tidings. Petior Baelish bowed deeply. It could never hurt to bow too low. I shall serve your child with the same vigor and loyalty in which I serve you. Stannis looked happy, the happiest Littlefinger had ever seen him. It didn't match his older brother when in the midst of a feast, or his younger brother in the midst of Loras Tyrell, but it was a shocking sight to those that knew Stannis. The future, Littlefinger, the future. He sat in his seat behind the desk. Shireen no longer will worry about inheriting the realm, to which is a mercy. I shall find her a proper husband. Mayhaps Jon Stark's half-brother. A good choice, I suspect. Princess Shireen is a beautiful and bright girl, but given her injury, it's best she's sheltered. A sigh. The true God tested me with that. I failed, but coming to him saved her life. In this Stannis spoke the greatest conviction. They were in Stannis' solar, a common domain for the Stag King these days. The parley was getting closer and closer. nerves and excitement driving him to seclusion even as his leg began to heal. Littlefinger was glad for it, as the coming of the treaty between Stannis and Daenerys presented many opportunities. Yes, your grace. Littlefinger allowed a pregnant pause before clearing his throat. There is a rumor I've heard about the Dragon Queen, your grace, from one of Qyburn's little birds and confirmed by my own sources. Stannis looked up from his desk. Your own sources? He shrugged. People are a talkative bunch. They seek out intimacy, especially after sex. Whores learn a lot, and I know plenty of them. It was how he was able to keep up with those such as Varys and Qyburn, the failings of man being the boon to him and his ambitions, including some in Meereen. I can see where this is going. Did one of Daenerys' commanders talk too much to a whore? A snort. I'm suggesting the imp. No, not him. Littlefinger paused again, waiting for Stannis to grow impatient. Daenerys has the loyalty of a sellsword company, the Second Sons. One of their men talked to one of my whore birds and spilled a juicy story their leader told him. Their leader? Yes, Dario Naharis. Naharis. Suddenly Stannis scowled. The one who harmed Jon? He's dead, so you do not need to worry. But this Dario was the lover of Queen Daenerys at the time. His subordinate asked if he worried he'd seeded a bastard in her, and Naharis boasted that she was the best lover. Not only did she know every carnal act that could bring a man pleasure, I don't want to hear this. Baelish smiled. It was amusing that Stannis only felt lust for his new wife. How pathetic. It truly is. But also, he continued, that she would never bear a child. To this, Stannis raised a brow. Meaning what? That she was taking moon tea? I would be shocked if she didn't, sleeping with a man completely lowborn and brutish. Nothing I have heard indicated that she took moon tea, meaning that she was confident that he couldn't get her with child. So he was infertile? Mayhaps she was. It was a dangerous rumor out there, given the treaty hinged on her and Jon Stark. Most likely, having an heir that would marry Stannis' child with Tyene Martell. If there was no chance at an heir, then the deal fell through. Baelish wanted to see how Stannis reacted to this. She could be barren. His reaction wasn't all surprising. What has Jon said of this? Lord Stark said nothing. Then she's not barren. Before Littlefinger could speak again, Stannis raised his hand. There is no one I trust more. He wished for this treaty and fought everyone to get it. If he trusts Daenerys to abide by it and not lie, then I trust him on it. Suspect that she endured the same worries about me, but chose to trust him. Those with a true concern for Stannis would have probably pushed ahead and tried to convince him of at least the folly of blind trust in a rival claimant, but Littlefinger was not that person. He merely smiled and nodded. Jon Stark should be very thankful for the trust of two illustrious monarchs. Stannis shook his head. No, Daenerys and I should be thankful to know a man such as him, a son in my life, and a lover and husband in hers. Stannis sighed and leaned back in his seat. Is that all, Baelish? There is a beautiful woman carrying my child waiting for me in my bed, alongside a warm blanket and soft sheets. It is unseasonably cold, my king. Littlefinger rose and bowed. I shall make my leave. Stannis grumbled a response before Ser Edric closed the door behind Littlefinger. His own chambers were quiet, a welcome respite from his bedchamber in the brothel. Even when alone there, the noises of pleasure wafted through the walls. Here, the higher plots necessitated silence. Chaos is a ladder, he murmured to himself, and smiled as he fingered the hand of the king pin upon his breast. Only a few more rungs to the top, and nigh 20 years of scrounging and planning and flesh-peddling would reach its zenith. This treaty was not the end, but merely the beginning of the end. Reaching for his desk, he took a key out of the folds of his long coat and opened a drawer, removing a raven scroll addressed to him. Foolish to send, but Baelish always took precautions. Baelish, the armies will be encamped outside the walls of the capital. We need not be enemies, but this atrocity of a treaty is an enemy of all that is good. I trust everything will be arranged. Tyrion Lannister. Smiling, Littlefinger tossed the letter into the hearth, watching it burn up into nothing but ash. Satisfying it was, all evidence of his treason evaporating. But it would all matter for naught. Daenerys would die, Jon Stark would die, mayhaps Tyene Martell, though she and her child might be useful. Stannis would live, if for a while. All Littlefinger needed was the support of one, and then all would fall into place. Sitting at his desk, he was greatly satisfied as he wrote out his words to that person. My dearest Sansa, I am hopeful that there will be peace, but worry greatly as to whether Daenerys can be trusted. She is the Mad King's daughter and has already seen her subordinate and former lover conduct atrocity upon your brother, Lord Stark. Be wary of everything. Trust no one but me, the friend of your late mother, since they are only out for their own interests. If things end in the worst possible manner, I shall soon join you. If not, I can hope you travel to King's Landing so you can make your mark upon the future of the realm. Your loyal servant and protector, Petyr Baelish. Good gods. Shaking his head, Lord Justin Massey turned to Jon. Good call on the peace treaty, Lord Stark. The Master of Laws gestured out to the vast array of unsullied hypaspists gathered in formation, screening the vast Dothraki horde that was setting up camp several miles outside of King's Landing. Larger than Tywin's armies, certainly. The gruff snort of Randyll Tarly only made Jon grit his teeth. Savages and slaves, the lot of them. Jon wanted to pop him in the mouth, but only pursed his lips. They look like savages and tawny soldiers, but they're tough. Fought them myself, and they are not pushovers. You were outnumbered, Stark. Give me 30,000 knights and men-at-arms and 5,000 archers, and they'd all be corpses. Don't forget the dragons, Randyll, said Lord Jason. I'm both scared and intrigued to see them. Now that caused Jon to smile. They are a sight to see, that's for sure. Peering down from the hill, he waited on alongside Stannis' diplomatic receiving party. A cloud of dust signaled the arrival of a large group of Daenerys' horsemen. Daenerys was not among them, but the Targaryen banners were. It's the Queen's Council. But not the Queen, Randyll hissed. I'm sure she's on her way. Jon dismounted from his horse and approached them on foot. They dismounted as well to greet him. Sir Barristan, Lady Missandei, he called out. Where are Lord Tyrion and Lord Varys? In the wheelhouse, Lord Stark, Barristan replied. It is heartening to see you well, Missandei said. Jon nodded. I am glad for that as well. So where's the Queen? A loud yet faint roar halted their conversation in its tracks, to which Jon was glad. Talking more with Tyrion would simply ruin his mood, and it was taking all of him not to beam in a rare joy as he spotted Drogon's dark form soar through the cloudless sky. He circled them, Rhaegal and Viserion bat-shaped smaller shadows higher above as if watching, waiting if there was a threat. There wouldn't be. Jon had assured it. Daenerys Targaryen had come home, at least the other place her house called home. Certainly, he almost laughed as many in Stannis' party flinched. Some panicked as Drogon swooped closer overhead. You scream in terror, even though she comes in peace. The vague memories of when he endured the hostile dragonfire were enough to give him proper respect for the dragons, and to know when they were hostile and when they were not. The lazy weaving through the air, more for show than to truly intimidate, it was clear if only to him. Not to mention the sight of silver hair streaming atop Drogon's back. His unlikely lover, the woman that had almost killed him, whose past lover had killed him, and yet Jon loved her anyway. Let none say that he chose the simple path. Wing beats kicking up great dust clouds, the columns of unsullied and Dothraki horsemen gave Drogon a wide berth as the beast landed, filling the air with a piercing roar. Announcing his rider's arrival, slowly he lowered his shoulder to the ground, allowing Daenerys to climb down, scrambling down with the spines for a ladder as if second nature to the monarch. Effortless, she dropped to the ground with a slight puff of dust around her black boots, a crown gracing her brow, and wearing her black battle dress with a red cape and sash. Regal, fearsome, and yet still utterly beautiful. Even from this distance, Jon's eyes locked with Daenerys's. Her regal face was not smiling as she approached. Yet, Jon could see what she wished others not to see. Happiness, same as his. Walking straight and powerful, Daenerys turned her head and seemed to call out to Drogon. The beast roared, unfurling his wings, and leaped into the sky. Everyone was watching the mighty beast sail high into the air, and then to the woman who rode him. It was only natural that her blood riders greet her first, then Ser Jorah, the 5 men surrounding her in a protective screen as she made her way towards her advisors. Missandei was greeted warmly, Barristan only slightly less so, a strange woman who kept clear of Ser Jorah, not that he paid her a glance, then fell in behind as Daenerys greeted Tyrion and Varys in a formalistic manner. Lyness Hightower, Daenerys said that she was a condition the Hightowers had to meet in order for peace. All thoughts left as Daenerys finally approached him, the love visible in her glittering amethyst eyes. It was all he could not break his diplomatic facade. Just as before, around her what remained of the pain finally vanished. Collecting himself, he stepped forward. Your Grace, he began. Lord Stark, she replied, voice just as diplomatic and melodic to the ear. On behalf of King Stannis of House Baratheon, as an envoy of peace, welcome to King's Landing. She nodded. Indeed, I hope it matches my expectations. He chuckled. I truly doubt that. Daenerys approached, to which he turned to gesture to Stannis' representatives. This is Lord Randall Tarley, Master of War and Lord of Hornhill, and Lord Justin Massey of Stone Dance, Master of Laws. We welcome you to the court of His Grace, King Stannis, Lord Justin remarked, bowing his head. And as Lord Stark alludes, we are hopeful for the peace to come. Peace is always welcome, Daenerys replied, as opposed to death. This land has seen enough death. Well said, Your Grace, Lord Justin agreed. Randyll said nothing. Daenerys picked up on it. I have been told of House Tarley's martial prowess, something worthy of respect. Randyll eyed her with thinly veiled disgust, making Jon's blood boil. Thank you, Your Grace. It seems the gods have ensured that your armies do not get a demonstration then. Jon wished he could give him a firm slap then and there. Daenerys, meanwhile, just pursed her lips. Indeed. She motioned for her horses. Let us head to the dragon pit then. I trust that is where the parley will be held. It is, though. Would you like... Daenerys waved Lord Massey off. I will rest while waiting for King Stannis. I desire to formalize this before accepting his generous hospitality. As I am sure would his grace, Jon added, knowing Stannis well. Let us ride. I shall accompany Queen Daenerys and inform her of the procedure. Lord Massey nodded, while Lord Randall just gave him a ghost of a sneer. The servants on either side brought up the horses, Daenerys on her beautiful white Dothraki mare, and Jon on a dark stallion. He rode as close to her as he could without looking suspicious, to which she did not seem to find offense to. Charming as Lord Tarley, she finally said to him, their voices low enough so that only they could hear each other. Ser Jorah and the Blood Riders gave them some privacy, as did Stannis' men. He was never someone I was inclined to like, he replied, happy that he could talk to her, but waiting for her to make the first move. Jon was nervous. Appearances needed to be kept, and he trusted Daenerys more in that regard. Sam told me he essentially threatened to have him killed in a hunting accident if he didn't go to the wall. Daenerys' hands tightened on the reins. I hate men like that, so hating a family. Samwell is a good person. My uncle liked him. She turned to look at him, and Jon caught the tiniest of smiles on her lips. Coupled with her warm gaze, it was practically the deepest of kisses. I am most heartened to see you again, Jon Stark. He mirrored her expression, voice low. Likewise, Queen Daenerys. King's Landing was quite tedious without your companionship. Jon looked back ahead. It shames me for not reciprocating how you welcomed me to Dragonstone. There was an ever so slight hitch in Daenerys' breath. Quite a shame then, fresh sheets, warm embraces, and dueling passions. A primal part of Jon yearned for it, and from her tone, so did Daenerys. You alluded in your last letter that Stannis wished for you to be the one to father his child's future spouse. Aye, he did. I think I'm the only one he trusts to do it. Smart of him, Daenerys snorted, voice dropping to a whisper. Anyone else would have slit his throat in his sleep. Jon shook his head. I am loyal to peace between the two of you, and this peace secures victors in both yourself and Stannis. I know, you made me see the reason to many things. Her eyes met his again. But is it something you want as well, Jon? He allowed himself a more open smile. And once it is agreed to, nothing will keep me from your bed. His words and hidden meaning were understood, Daenerys gazing at him with adoration. I desire it as well. They both looked ahead, satisfied smiles on their lips. So, how will this occur? Stannis will meet you in the Dragon Pit with his chief advisors, and you will discuss the clauses of the treaty directly. Further negotiation? Just a formality, mayhaps some superficial changes, but he wishes that he hear the clauses from you and gain your direct agreement. Understood. And no objections from me. She looked at him earnestly. I want my birthright, but I am tired of war, Jon. If he keeps up his word, then so will I. All I want to hear. So caught up with each other's presence, neither of them noticed a pair of eyes glaring daggers at their backs, minds swirling with anticipation at what was to occur. Someone did, however. The place of the demise of House Targaryen. Truly it was poetic in a way, where the final act of the end of their true power, where the dragons had been wiped out over a series of decades from the shepherd's riot to the miserable existence of the final beast to hatch from an egg, would be their supposed resurrection. Littlefinger was not a poet, but his clever mind could appreciate it. Daenerys Targaryen would, by the machinations of Jon Stark, enter the Dragon Pit as a foreign queen and pretender, and emerge from it as the official heir to the Iron Throne. Quite a masterful deal that Jon Stark had brokered, leveraging his personal relationship with both parties in order to secure an agreement both could live with. Stannis would reign as he always intended. Daenerys would have time to introduce herself to the realm while settling accounts in the east before being crowned, and a child who would be a quarter Baratheon Martell, Stark, and Targaryen would eventually be crowned. A glorious or frightening combination depending on whom one asked. Masterful, one for the histories that the Citadel would inevitably transcribe in the coming decades and centuries if it ever happened. Petyar Baelish smiled to himself, awaiting the king and queen to exit the wheelhouse as he waited with his arms folded over his front. Such a shame that something so artful would never truly see the light of day. But such was the way of the world. Only 1 or 2 rungs to go, and he wouldn't let such mere things as admiration get in the way of his rise. For he was but a landed knight by birth. Only chaos would allow him to rise beyond such a station to greater things. Chaos was his friend, his lover, even... In a way, Littlefinger was more intimate with chaos than he could ever be with any woman. Even Catelyn or Sansa. The smile widened. Good timing, for the king and queen emerged at that moment. "Your graces," he said, bowing. "All is ready for the parley." "The place is cleaned up, correct?" Stannis gruffly interrogated, the only hints of affection in his life reserved for Jon Stark, Queen Tyene, and his daughter. "Last I remember, it was a sand-covered dump." "Rest assured, my king. I oversaw its cleanup personally." Personally, he spent his time in his brothel while others ensured the sand was carted away and the place decorated as much as could be possible given that it was a ruin. Luckily, there were plenty of redheads to take the place of his talented Raws. Soon he could indulge in the real thing, but Baelish was anything if not patient. "Our banners as well as the Dragon Queen's..." He snorted. "She's on her way?" Lord Stark and Lord Tarley personally escorted her. "They are waiting inside now." A scowl. "I should have arrived first." "My fault, husband," Tyene purred, stroking his hand. "Ever the seductress and manipulator, blame the fact I cannot walk as swiftly as I used to." Stannis' face softened as he shifted his hand, stroking her stomach. "Never apologize, love." That did the trick. His irritation calmed as the king stiffly but without assistance marched into the ruined dragon pit behind his guards. Tyene offered Baelish an inquisitive look, to which he followed with a placid smile. She was not buying it. No, she cannot possibly know. He was too meticulous. Baelish banished away his nerves as he followed. As stated, the Dragon Queen's retinue was present in its entirety. Seated upon the raised dais with plenty of guards surrounding them, the queen herself was in the center. She was as beautiful as the rumors, her hair glinting in the sun and luscious lips pressed in a firm expression. Oh, would she have fetched the highest prices if she worked in the brothel? But alas, Baelish wasn't so lucky. Another only slightly less beautiful woman, the dark-skinned Missandei of Nath, sat next to Daenerys. As low-born as the queen was high-born, but the mass of other advisors were known personally to Baelish. Jorah Mormont, the victor of the Lannisport joust, his old verbal sparring partner Varys, the last of the Tyrells Sir Garland, Barristan the Bold himself. Baelish met Tyrion Lannister's gaze for but a split second, but from the imp's expression he knew that all was set. Mayhaps not the way Tyrion intended, but his actions were appreciated nonetheless. Given what had happened at the last parley, guards ringed both royals tightly, the King's Guard for Stannis, and the savage Dothraki and unsullied bodyguards, plus Ser Jorah for Daenerys. When all were seated, Jon Stark cleared his throat. "Everyone, welcome today to this gathering, which shall hopefully bring peace." Sir Davos Seaworth stood up on Stannis' behalf. "Behold Stannis of House Baratheon, the first of his name. The prince who was promised, king of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and protector of the realm." Across the dais, Lady Missandei mirrored Sir Davos. "You stand before Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, first of her name, the Unburnt, queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, queen of Meereen, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, protector of the realm, Lady Regnant of the Seven Kingdoms, breaker of chains, and mother of dragons. A dueling of strength through titles." Baelish cleared his throat. "All right, now that both your grace, the Queen of Meereen, and his grace, King of the..." His statement was interrupted as a loud roar shook the dragon pit. Stannis jumped in his seat a bit, his hand clutching Tyene's hand, while many others of the King's party, and even some in the Dragon Queen's party, flinched or fell to the ground, trying to crouch behind their seats even if it wouldn't matter worth a damn if the dragon actually targeted them. One of those was Baelish, a moment that was profoundly embarrassing. To his credit, he stood back up as the dragons appeared over the dragon pit. First, the smaller, sleek one. Smaller in a relative sense, the beast being massive. Barely a second after came the green one. Larger than the black one, the largest of all. They all shot by and began circling the dragon pit. not making any hostile movement but menacing just by their presence. While the king seemed in awe of them behind his frosty exterior, but Littlefinger could see it, Baelish noticed the anger among many in the king's retinue. "I must protest, your grace," he said in an indignant yet still diplomatic tone. One condition of this parley was that those beasts would be far away from King's Landing. His eyes flickered to Jon Stark, who winced. "Lord Stark assured us of your agreement to this condition." "Queen Daenerys?" Jon asked her, more familiar than was the norm. Daenerys, for her part, merely smiled softly. Innocently. "My apologies, my dragons are used to freely roaming Dragonstone and Meereen." "Well then, get rid of them." A shrug. "I'll try. They don't always listen to me." Delicate brows furrowing, the Dragon Queen looked up at her dragons. There was a moment of concentrated staring before 3 hoots rang out in quick succession. The beasts flapped their wings, and soon they were out of sight. Flying towards the northeast. "Seems they are in an agreeable mood." "A good omen, of course," Jon piped up, smiling. "Now let us proceed." "This deal is simple, if I recall correctly," Lord Tarley said, with quite a hint of bitterness. "Queen Daenerys bends the knee and is named heir. That is not the arrangement, and you know it, my lord." Lady Missandei replied. Randyll snorted. "And who are you to speak to me? Some freedwoman?" Daenerys scowled. "Lady Missandei is my advisor and mistress of protocol, so you would be wise to treat her with respect." "I am—" Stannis raised his hand to silence Tarley. "Be quiet, my lord." Randyll obeyed, though still scowled. "I am not asking you to bend the knee, Queen Daenerys. In my capacity as your heir or as a foreign queen?" "Both." He squeezed Tyenne's hand, something Baelish noticed him doing often when stressed. "How touching," he figured sarcastically. "Stannis, of all people to go soft. What was it, Lord Stark, that you told me?" Jon nodded. "This pact would seal before all not just a treaty of peace and alliance between King Stannis of House Baratheon and Queen Daenerys of House Targaryen, but as a seal of adoption. In effect, Queen Daenerys would become the adopted daughter of King Stannis, sealed in union with a marriage between herself and one of his bannermen." "Being yourself, I suppose?" Randyll asked with no small sarcasm. "Enough, Tarley," Tyene hissed. "My husband trusts none but Lord Stark to engage in this action." "None," repeated Stannis, who then looked poignantly at Daenerys. Her face was placid, but her eyes burned as she glanced at Jon Stark. "I have no objections nor to anything else on this treaty." She folded her hands in her lap. "I shall stay in Westeros for the next 2 years, in which I will marry, assist in the rebuilding after such a great war, and aid my adopted father the king in administering the 7 kingdoms. After which, I will journey back to Meereen and stay there until time to assume the crown. Provided you produce an heir to wed my second-born child," Stannis interjected. Daenerys was silent for a moment. "Yes." Stannis nodded. "I have no objection to the treaty. And now we proceed to the official union of this sacred treaty." Jon Stark continued, raising his arms so that each hand bid each monarch to rise. Stannis Baratheon and Daenerys Targaryen, sealing the pact together as father and adopted daughter, as king of the 7 kingdoms and crown princess of Westeros for the glory of all and peace between all. Long may they reign. The delegates all spoke at once, if a delay from the usse in Daenerys' entourage, if only for want of translation, truly proving how foreign the Dragon Queen's support was after the fall of Olenna Tyrell. It amused Baelish. For their part, the monarchs made no move to rise. Silence prevailed in the dragon pit, not even a cricket or a gust of wind breaking the din. Stannis gripped the arm of his seat, on edge, while Daenerys kept her hands in her lap and stared at the king in stony silence until she rose. Ever graceful with not a hair out of place, she walked to the near center of the dais close to Jon Stark, her lover. Eyes expectantly on Stannis, daring him to do the same. A dare he did finally take, broken out of his scowl by Queen Tyene, squeezing his hand. Stannis squeezed it back and rose himself. Baelish didn't bother watching him walk slowly towards Jon Stark and the Dragon Queen. Instead, his eyes flickered to the walls of the dragon pit, searching for something, his heart beating in anticipation, until he found it. A slight glint in the sun betrayed the location of his crowning achievement. Pettier Baelish hid the small smile underneath his whisper-thin mustache. Only a few more rungs, only a few more. Their eyes met. Jon offered the largest smile that he could. Very small. Only Daenerys likely able to tell his gesture was reassuring, alongside a soft expression. He hoped she would calm her hard facade. But it didn't work. Her tension, her suspicion was not directed at him but at Stannis and the deal. He sighed to himself as Dany drew close, quicker than Stannis. She was blessed by youth, after all. Please, Dany, he murmured softly. Give a chance for peace. An ever so slight deflation. I will try. Her voice was just as quiet as his. But I cannot speak for your stag. He nodded. It was fair. Proceeding slowly, a few seconds passed following her last words for the king to make it. His wound had healed surprisingly well after his marriage to Tyenine, but that didn't mean his leg wasn't stiff. Your graces, Jon began, gesturing to them. May your mutual affection be the start of peace between the last contenders to the throne left. The final participant in the War of the Five Kings joined with the rightful Targaryen heir, each with their own strong claim to legitimacy. Truly the two strongest and best to rule. Stannis opened his arms wide. Daenerys Targaryen, he began, his voice amiable and gracious, as much as Stannis was capable of, anyway. This is the first time I can say it is pleasant to see you. Sadly, I cannot say the same, Dany replied. Well, you should feel differently, Stannis said. After this day, your rule will be confirmed. Just a later time. I've made this decision to spare lives, Daenerys replied, somewhat snarkily. Which is honorable, I will admit, Stannis said. I fully expected you to rain fire from the skies. Daenerys gave a smile, one more fierce than friendly. Jon knew it well, though he had come acquainted with her other sort of smile much more in the moons to follow. I considered it. If Stannis felt insulted or angered, he didn't show it. But what would it accomplish? What purpose is it to rule if you only rule over ash and bones? Stannis nodded, a question too often unasked by those that seek power. It brings me relief to hear it on your tongue, even if I hadn't expected it. Such a mix of words of cooperation and thinly veiled mistrust was starting to aggravate Jon. Enough of this. He lowered his voice so that only his love and his surrogate father could hear. You entrusted me and accepted me as your envoy because mutually I bore connection to the both of you. Daenerys' eyes softened, if only at him, filled with love. The same mirrored from Stannis, an expression he remembered his own father giving him. I trust the both of you to ensure this peace as you trusted me to broker it. But it is time that you trust each other. Blinking, Daenerys' loving gaze morphed into wariness as she regarded Stannis. Understandable given the circumstances of her life. As for Stannis, his wariness was much less concealed, if only due to his usual stoniness. He sighed. Need I remind the two of you that you're cousins by blood? Jon then raised his voice, allowing all to hear. Let hostility be dropped, hatred be dissolved, and a bond of peace and family be formed together in sight before all. He raised up his hands again, placing each on the shoulder of his love and his surrogate father, nudging gently, bidding them to approach each other. Taking a deep breath, Stannis did so. Daenerys eyed Jon once before nodding and meeting Stannis halfway. Kin, she murmured. Kin, Stannis repeated, extending out his hand, which Daenerys clasped. Daughter, while there was still tension and awkwardness, for once Dany offered a proper smile and accepted the embrace from Stannis. Per protocol as dictated in the treaty, officially binding them as adopted father and adopted daughter, but also a gesture of reconciliation and familial unity. Sighing in relief, Jon allowed himself to close his eyes. Finally, there would be peace. Finally, he would be at peace. The two sides of his soul bound together just as he had striven for. The sun was starting to lower in the sky with mid-afternoon, angled to the south given the winter months. The top of the dragon pit had just begun to block its direct rays, so when a glint hit Jameson's eyes, he noticed it. Blinking, he followed it not to the sun, but to the west. A flash of something near the top, and he just made out a muffled thwack, and a whoosh. He put things together in an instant. No, he cried, not knowing who it was intended to kill, the man he saw as a father figure or the woman he loved more than anything. Jon shoved them both to the ground. Dany yelped as she smacked flat on her arse upon the wooden dais, only to scream as a burning pain erupted on his right arm. The arrow had torn through the skin. Superficial but painful. Jon pitched back a bit, but immediately reached up to put pressure on the wound. The barbed arrow had smacked into the wooden deck behind him. There was a hung silence over the entire dragon pit, but it lasted only a few seconds before the tension manifested itself. Swords were drawn, spears leveled, and non-combatants like Queen Tyenine and Lady Missandei were surrounded by armored warriors. "Your Grace!" shouted Sir Barristan, who rushed to Daenerys and helped her to her feet. She ignored Barristan, eyes on Jon. "Jon, Lord Stark." "I'm fine," Jon mumbled. "I'm fine. Just a flesh wound." "Fuck, it hurt." "Find who did that," Stannis bellowed. "Find who did that and bring him to me." "The perpetrator is there, Your Grace," Randy growled. "Standing right before you." He pointed at Daenerys, eyes steely. "And Lord Stark wasn't the target, you were." Lies, Lord Tyrion glared at Tarly. It was Daenerys that was the target, betraying the treaty. Gritting his teeth, Jon heard Baelish speak, his gaze shifting to Stannis' hand. The arrow was aimed for our king. I saw where it was. Lord Stark knows as well. Gods. Jon thought hard about it, but the burning pain in his arm blocked his mind. Just as all descended into chaos, Jon, get away from the dragon spawn, ordered Stannis. She tried to kill you. You tried to kill him, you swine. Daenerys screamed, a distant dragon roar echoing from far off. Jon, get away from him. Guards ran up on both sides, the situation deteriorating. Tyne was hauled away, while more men spilled in through the two entrances to the dragon pit. Heavily armored men-at-arms gathered around Stannis' council, while Unsullied did the same for Daenerys's. Please, Jon. The Targaryens are not to be trusted. Don't fall for them. This was it. He couldn't stand in the middle any longer. Remembering his promise, Jon made his choice. Quickly, he went to Daenerys, his love immediately embracing him and inspecting his wound. Moving in front of the both of them, Barristan drew his sword, gleaming against the sun. He stepped up, running his fingers down the blade. His surroundings began to run rampant. Chaos filled the air. From the Baratheon side, Randyll Tarly pushed his way through, with a snarky grimace. He too brandished his sword. Jon took Dany in his arms behind Ser Barristan. Stannis' eyes remained on him as his guardsmen put their hands on him, pulling him back. They were wide, the hint of tears welling within them at feeling the betrayal, almost slack-jawed. Gripping Daenerys protectively, Jon nevertheless met the gaze, apology shining through. Stannis averted his gaze at that moment. A vice on Jon's heart. He had failed. The developing situation wouldn't halt because of his failure, though. Baratheon soldiers gathered next to Randyll, while a troop of Unsullied marched forward, deploying a ragged shield wall around Barristan, as the Dothraki stayed close to Daenerys and Jon. I could kill you with my eyes closed. Tarly, Barry said. Randyll growled. Your mind is addled and lost, unsurprised based on your time spent in the wilderness with the dragon bitch. It was getting out of hand. Stop, Jon cried, one last chance to prevent bloodshed, besides his own. 7 hells, stop. Traitor, someone shouted from Stannis' side. You tried to kill him, Missandei shouted back, her normally peaceful features aroused to anger. He sought peace and you ambushed him. You ambushed him, foreign whore. Kinslayer. Whore. Murderer. The insults flew, made all the more threatening with the leveled weapons. Dany, give the order to stand down. She looked at him, fear in her eyes as she held his arm, blood trickling between her fingers. They tried to kill you. Her sentiment, filled with love and worry of him, was admirable, but Jon couldn't let this happen. Your Grace, he called to Stannis, catching his attention. Peace is still at hand. I know you did not order this attack, nor did Queen Daenerys. Lower your arms, and the Queen's men will do the same. I give my word as a son of Eddard Stark and one trusted by both of you. If Stannis would waver, it would never be known. Traitor, a random bannerman leaped out of the line and charged at Daenerys. Like a well-oiled cog, an Unsullied thrust his spear out, skewering the man in the chest. Spearhead punching through the armor and felling the man as the Unsullied drew back into the line. Jon let out a defeated breath. All bets were now off as the skirmish began, the core bodyguards sticking close to their charges while the rest of the men raced at each other. Crossbows began to pepper the Unsullied shields with bolts, while men that got within spear range were dispatched quickly. 2 swordsmen ran at Missandei, but Ser Barristan defended that portion of the line, and they were dead quicker than they could run. Advance, Jorah yelled in Valyrian, the Unsullied contracting into a more proper shield wall and beginning to march forward. The Baratheons tried to hold their own against the aggression of the Unsullied. Barristan and Randyll exchanged sword swings, their duel beginning. Randyll swung somewhat randomly, filled with intensity, yet Barristan parried each strike, further fueling Randyll's desire to kill him. Jon, Stannis wailed, his eyes insanely wide. Jon knew his mind struggled to wrap around the idea of being abandoned for Daenerys. Jon stared back at Stannis. They locked eyes, but he said nothing. Stannis watched him retreat backward, arms wrapped around Dany. It took 2 Baratheons to keep him from running after Jon. It was then that the Stag King visibly broke. Stannis roared, "Kill them! The throne is mine! This betrayal will not stand!" They kept pulling the king until he was out of sight. But even over the sounds of battle, they heard his booming voice, still wailing. Somewhat obviously, after hearing the order from their king, many Baratheon bowmen filled the area. Randyll shoved Barristan back and yelled, "Now! Loose!" Many of those arrow tips pointed in the direction of Barristan and the Unsullied around him. Barristan had little time to protect himself, but before he could react, 2 Unsullied stepped astride him, shields up. All the other Unsullied mirrored but for themselves. The arrows let loose hit many but killed none because of the Unsullied's defense. Most clapped against the shields, while blood spilled from glancing wounds to the shoulders and arms. Barristan emerged mere seconds later, snapping an arrow from his thigh. If the wound affected him, it was impossible to tell. Advance. Barristan surged back forward at Randyll. The Unsullied pushed the archers, cutting them down. The Lord of Hornhill was completely taken off guard. With Barristan on the offensive, Randyll barely managed to block his blows. The 2 aged swordsmen almost looked 20 years younger. Another squadron of bowmen climbed up the upper area of the dragon pit, out of Unsullied spear reach. With the high ground, their targets below would be in severe danger. Barristan noticed his time may be running out. Given his position, these arrows could easily kill him. With one quick glance behind him, he could see Jon and Daenerys completely covered in a defensive position by Unsullied shields, the Dothraki bloodriders hustling them out alongside her council. He heard Daenerys call out to him, Barristan. Clearly, she didn't want to leave without him. But he had to finish this fight with Randyll Tarly, and quickly. Those archers would begin raining arrows in mere moments. Barristan roared as loud as his old lungs could muster, swinging down from overhead. Randyll brought his blade up to block. However, the force Barristan came down with was too much for him. After the block, he was left wide open. Sarah Selmy took advantage. Using his fastest attack, a powerful stab through the neck. Randyll was unable to do anything about it. Lord Tarly fumbled his blade to the ground. Eyes locked onto the blade, jammed through his neck and out the other side. Barristan whipped his blade out from the right. Randyll's body fell away, blood pumping from the neck. Retreat, Barristan yelled. He begins to run back toward Jon and Daenerys, the Unsullied next to him. The arrow lodged in his thigh finally caught up to him. But the archers on the upper level had them all bunched up now. The arrows came quickly, and they really had no defense this time. In the blink of an eye, their group became filled with arrows. Falling to his knees, Barristan attempted to use his sword to leverage himself back up. He'd gotten hit with 2 arrows in his back and 1 in his left arm. He knew he was finished. No feasible way he makes it across to Daenerys without dying to more arrows. Go, now, he yelled, waving his hand away at them. The archers loosed more arrows, but much to his surprise, the few Unsullied that survived the first volley surrounded Barristan. Their shields and bodies kept Barry alive yet again. His eyes observed all the dead bodies around him. 1 Unsullied still lived, though not for long. He stared Barry in the eyes, blood spilling out the mouth. Jon had managed to pull Daenerys away, though she held her arms out to Barristan, still calling out for him. The old Barristan the Bold huffed, shaking his head at Daenerys. He watched her until she was gone. Closing his eyes, he expected a smooth transition from eyes shut to death. However, it didn't come immediately. However, when he opened his eyes again, he was surrounded by Baratheons. One of them kicked his sword away, which caused him to fall on his face. Considering he was leaning on it for support. A few moments later, he heard the familiar ranting and raving of Stannis. The stag returned to the dragon pit, hand wrapped tightly around his sword hilt, veins bursting. All the guards cleared out for him, especially around Randyll. Damn it, Stannis cursed, seeing Randy's body. Dickon Tarly knelt by his father's corpse, eyes flicking back and forth between the body and severed head. Barristan felled him, the son nodded. Where is he? Is he dead? Dickon said, pointing behind. Over there. Barristan's cheek felt the vibration of Stannis' boots sliding to a halt next to him. Lift him up, Stannis said. They pulled Barristan to his knees. You've taken a few shots here, Selmy. Are you still here? Unfortunately, Barry said, blood dripping from his lip. Stannis knelt down to eye level with Barry. I respect you, Barristan Selmy. You served Robert well. He was right to spare you. But you're finished now. He rose back up to his feet. You killed Randyll, one of my most loyal servants. For that, you must die. Barristan gurgled, eyes flicking skyward, wishing he might have seen the dragons flying overhead one more time. Long live the true Queen Day. His voice was intercepted by Stannis' blade piercing through his chest. The last of the air in his lungs escaped out of his mouth. His body fell to the side, lifeless, as the blade was pulled back out. What God's damn fucking mess, Stannis cursed. What now, my king? A nearby guard said. Now, we prepare for battle. He turned away, so no one could see the tears in his eyes. Jon, Stannis murmured. Why? Stannis exploded into his solar, trailed closely by Davos and Littlefinger. The king knocked over any chairs or vases or tables in his way, making a huge racket. Your Grace. Littlefinger started, but was interrupted by Stannis, just bellowing loudly. This could be the end of everything, Davos muttered. Oh, certainly, I won't go down without a fight, Stannis said, fists tightening. What of the people in the city? Lives will be lost, undoubtedly, Stannis grimaced. We must limit those losses. The bitch might just raise the city if she gets a chance. It was Baelish who spoke up next. Davos eyed him wearily. Your Grace, we must brace ourselves for the attack. We must keep you safe. Stannis cut in, hastily and with anger. I will not cower. I will not hide. I will face the dragon bitch on the field of battle. If Jon Stark dares cross swords with me, I will fucking destroy him. But even as he finished that sentence, his mind imagined Jon lying dead before his feet. He hoped no one noticed his lip quivering at the thought. He had loved none other like he loved Jon. Yes, of course, Your Grace, Baelish agreed, eyes flashing between Davos and Stannis. But we must have a plan. Stannis nodded steadily, then turned to Baelish. His mind was a mess, swirling between anger, pain, betrayal, and 1,000 other emotions that would take a century to sort out. However, looking at his hand, something did manage to emerge. I have a question for you. Perhaps you're the only one who could answer it. What is it, Your Grace? Who fired that arrow? Baelish was taken off guard, trying desperately to not show it. Certainly, he could not reveal what he knew, but Stannis would just be satisfied with any answer. Stannis followed up, I know it wasn't I who had ordered it, surely I wouldn't forget something so important, and I don't think my memory is failing me to that degree, at least not yet. Indeed. I can find out for you, my king, Baelish said. Davos narrowed his gaze at Littlefinger. He hadn't truly had time to put any thought into who might have caused or ordered that arrow to be loosed. It did happen extremely fast, to be fair, but from his weathered eyes could tell, in that split second, that the arrow was aimed in a more central position, not targeting the king or Daenerys Targaryen. It would be difficult to ascertain the specific target without finding the shooter. Stannis closed the distance to Baelish, right into his airspace. To his credit, he did not waver in the sight of the Stag King. I have an inkling that it was a rogue agent. I know not of this bowman. By the reaction of Daenerys, she didn't either. This points me to the fact it was a rogue agent, sent by a middleman, who would gain quite a lot if the parlay didn't go off smoothly. Any ideas, Baelish? I will look into it fervently, at once. See that you do. Now. Resembling a scorned child, Baelish scampered out of the room. Then Stannis turned to Davos. It's time we gather the generals, everyone. We must prepare for battle. The fortified camp had gone up quickly, started before the sudden news that hostilities were resumed, and done with an even greater fervor. Dothraki weren't known to fortify their positions, but they obeyed their Khaleesi's orders with aplomb, while the Unsullied had been drilled through all training to build defensible camps. The dragons patrolling overhead, they were safe from a surprise attack. If not from further death and dying, then at least from a surprise ally from Stannis' forces. That didn't ease Daenerys' restlessness as she paced in her tent. Fists balled out of frustration, and tears occasionally fell from her eyes and cheeks, adding a tinge of worry and sadness. Preemptive sadness? Calm down, Khaleesi, begged Ser Jorah, standing at the entrance to the tent protectively. Even with 8 Dothraki guards outside, he still kept vigil, death unable to sway that side of him. If Daenerys were in any other situation, she'd have found it comforting. Mired in the mix of worry and rage, this was not the time. Calm down? Calm down? Daenerys turned to glare at him, and above Drogon roared, sensing his rider's emotions. How can you tell me that? With what's happening? Jorah took a step to her, pleading on his face. Khaleesi, Jon Stark has survived worse injuries before, and the arrow merely grazed him. 'Tis not a serious wound. That's what they said of the flesh wound Drogo suffered in his scuffle, and look what happened. He was poisoned while your most trusted healers tend to Lord Stark. Daenerys crossed her arms but bit her lips, trembling out her apprehension. Khaleesi, he will be fine. You do not know that. She shook her head. We've lost too many already this morning. Daenerys finally sat, her fingers squeezed insanely tight on the arms of her chair. Through gritted teeth, she said, We shouldn't have left Barristan back there alone. We had no choice, Jorah said. We had every choice, she shot back. We chose to let him sacrifice himself. Barristan Selmy, only you have been by my side for longer. And now Jon is wounded again, threatened with death again for simply choosing me. Dany stopped for a moment and closed her eyes. Her mind filled instantly with memories of Barristan like rushing water. She covered her face with her hands. Jorah winced, causing her to drop her hands and brow to rise. Is there any chance that someone on our side? No. Daenerys shook her head vociferously. Impossible. No one on my side would threaten him. I know you would never give the order, Daenerys, but perhaps someone acting on their own accord like Naharis, Varys, Tyrion, even Sir Barristan himself was aghast at the revelations about Jon Stark when he was on Dragonstone. Even as she denied it, Jorah's words made sense to her. Many thought Jon a danger, but to go to such brazen lengths? I cannot see it. Jon wasn't the target. I was. One of Stannis' men was trying to kill me. Stannis himself? Mayhaps not. The heat of the moment had cooled, and her mind could think more rationally. He could have had his own overeager subordinates, but tragically it's too late. He certainly thinks the wounding of Jon was an attempt on his life on my part. Gods help me. Her lip quivered as she looked at the top of the tent, the opening where the central hearth would empty its smoke. I didn't want further bloodshed. Regardless of what they say of me, I truly believe Jon's beloved peace parley would work, that Stannis and I could find an accord. But now it's hopeless. Jorah advanced to her, circling his arms around Daenerys the way a father would, letting the distraught queen finally seek the comfort she never knew in her life. The Lord of Light will see you through to a quick victory, Khaleesi. We can end this in a single stroke, stopping this war. Daenerys snorted, looking up at her bare knight. It's odd hearing you speak of gods like that. I have seen too much in one lifetime to think anything other than miracles. Pithy, but she could not refute it. Suddenly the tent flap opened, revealing Missandei. Your Grace, Jon Stark is asking for you. Is he? The healers say he is well and patched up. He only requested your presence. Missandei needed not to say any more before Daenerys hurled herself out of the tent, rushing without heed of anything towards the healers. A sense of history repeating itself flooded Daenerys' mind when she burst into the tent of the healers. All the Dothraki ladies kneeling in her presence while their charge merely stood from the seat in which he rested. Dany, he murmured, only to cut out as she threw her arms around his waist. Oh, was all that Jon could say, though he wrapped his unaffected arm around her shoulder. I feel better already. Bare-chested, he looked strong and handsome, apart from the bandages wrapped around his affected shoulder already starting to soak with dried blood. An image of Drogo in a similar state, mighty with his war wound only to collapse in sweat and fever a week later, threatened to destroy her. I thought you were lost. She was sure he would snort and comment on how the wound was minor, but instead, Jon merely kissed her forehead. I have too much to live for, words that did elate the queen. You're right with being open. You chose me, Dany replied. All saw it, so pretense be damned. Jon chuckled and tilted her chin up, kissing her. Oh, how Dany had missed his kisses, but he broke it too early. Necessary, but she wanted more nonetheless. I take it the battle is to be joined. There is no choice on that matter. Daenerys hadn't seen Tyrion amble in, but he was there with the almost semi-permanent glower on his lips. Stannis sought to assassinate the queen, even after she acceded to the peace. Jon frowned as well. I cannot believe that he would do that. Lord Stark, Missandei replied, also suddenly appearing out of nowhere. Dany surmised her awareness was purely settled on Jon, not her surroundings. Missandei was more wary than angered than the others at Jon's continued defense of Stannis. Perhaps no one will ever know what happened. Tyrion's eyes flickered dangerously to her, and it seemed he didn't realize Daenerys noticed. But reality finds us forced to operate on the assumption that it was Stannis or someone under Stannis' command that sought our queen's death, yet instead wounded you. Eyes focused on Jon, Daenerys watched him seem to deflate. Resignation and realization overcome him. I know. It did break her heart to see him so conflicted, that his choice to choose her had caused him so much pain. But they were not those with the luxury of holding simple lives. That Daenerys was able to have him and love him was a miracle in and of itself. What shall our next objective be then? An attack against King's Landing, Tyrion replied almost immediately. 3 dragons can end the war in a mere hour or two, and that's being generous to Stannis. Daenerys narrowed her eyes at him. I do not want to destroy the city, Tyrion. I do not want the people to fear the dragons will always burn them alive. Forgive me, your grace, but after the last battle in which my sister died, the city already suffered greatly. Fewer casualties would be forthcoming in firing ruins already harmed in the previous conflict. She noticed Jon shake his head. There was less damage done to the city than you suppose, Tyrion. He had been in the city, he would know. In the many moons since there was rebuilding, thousands inhabit tent cities with their homes destroyed. If wood and stone were death traps before, imagine cloth and leather against dragonfire. The image of men, women, and children immolated in such a way horrified Daenerys. She wished the Iron Throne, but not like that. Never like that. Jorah crossed his arms. Lord Stark, loath am I to risk innocence, but would the coming struggle you warn us all of be served by the bloodshed being shouldered by her grace's armies? Tyrion rolled his eyes, but it was an important point Daenerys considered. Who was more important, her men or the small folk of King's Landing? There were no easy choices. Jon was quiet for a moment, but when he looked up at her, his eyes seemed to blaze. Stannis will want to confront this aggressively, and I already showed him how. She needed clarification. How did... Her eyes widened. That terrible day when she and Jon clashed in battle. You closed quickly with my army, Daenerys murmured. You knew I wouldn't lead Drogon on my own men. He nodded firmly. Your love and loyalty to your Unsullied and Dothraki were legend even then. Daenerys blinked. He will lead his men out of the city to fight us, and that is when I will end this war. How? Missandei asked. A small group of men, elite men, will sneak inside the Red Keep and confront Stannis, make him surrender. Kill him. Jon was silent. Make him surrender. Tyrion chuckled. He will not surrender, so you will have to kill him. Do you have the stomach for that? Another pregnant pause, the conflict and pain written on Jon's face. Daenerys reached out to him, squeezing his hand. She'd faced the same when her own brother died, and hoped he knew her support never wavered. If it comes to that, Lord Tyrion, I chose Daenerys after all. How will you sneak in? Missandei was confused. Do you have anyone inside? Mayhaps I do, he replied. Someone who wants peace as much as I. Jaxali's eyes shifted back to Daenerys. If you could, your grace, fly over the city, set fire to parts of the city that seem deserted. Everyone will be panicked over the dragons that they won't notice anything else. Playing on their fear of them, of fire and blood. It was a brilliant strategy, Daenerys had to admit. All right, she hugged Jon, kissing his chin. Stay safe. I have much to return to, Daenerys. He kissed her forehead. I love you. Dany smiled as she rested her chin on his shoulder. I love you too. Just as she left the tent for him to dress, Dany heard one last conversation behind her. I saw what you did, Jorah muttered. None else heard his next words. Save Jon and Daenerys. You chose Daenerys. But it wasn't much of a choice, was it? For an answer, Jon eyed Jorah steadily. No, it was not. Do not be a hero, Turgon Nuto. The burn of a sword slash or the agony of a spear thrust couldn't compare to the pain of Missandei's crushing hug near splitting his armor while her fearful tone stabbed deeper than any blade into his heart. Despair is the woman that loses her love on the last day of war. All very new to him. This was the art of loving a woman, even separated from his manhood. It was easier to simply bring physical release to his lover than to ease her mind and soul, Grey Worm found. However, he gladly asserted the challenge, arms wrapping around her shoulders as he kissed Missandei's frizzy hair. Missandei should not worry about Grey Worm. He will emerge unscathed and victorious. She looked at him with a sad smile. The overconfident are always the first to fall. It is not overconfidence, just simply reality. Whenever the queen seeks a killing blow, she delivers it. The case in Essos and in Westeros, she had defeated Jon Stark in battle back when he was an enemy, and that had been Grey Worm's hardest fight in his years as a warrior. Missandei shook her head. Remember, simply lure Stannis' army from the walls. It won't be our force of arms that ends this war, but rather Jon Stark's. He frowned. Something more common to him than a smile. I'm still unsure if I should trust Lord Stark. Do you trust me? With my life, Grey Worm answered without hesitation. Her smile was lovely and genuine. Then be one of the few to believe my intuition. He will pull through. Just do what you can to avoid casualties. Their eyes met for a pregnant pause, and he finally nodded. The memory of her arms encircling him, her lips on his still played in his muscle memory as the sea breeze blew in from Blackwater Bay. Something hard to get used to so far from the sun-kissed lands of the majority of his life, but oddly welcome once strapped into his leather armor, helm, and the steel breastplate insisted on after first contact with the Westerosi armies. So much had changed for him, from just being a soulless tool fighting because it was his very existence to having a cause to fight for. For liberation from bondage. For the queen he willingly served. For Missandei. All his choice, freely chosen. In this he would follow Jon Stark's plan, even if something about the Lord of Winterfell unsettled him. But the Lord of Winterfell had chosen Daenerys as much as Grey Worm did, calming his fears. Would it work, though? A man who rose from the dead could certainly make the impossible happen. Unsullied, he belted out in his loudest voice. the order carried out by the dozens of junior officers. Shield wall. The clatter of thousands of round shields rang out, echoing through the still air. March. In a six-man deep line, the thousands of hoplites advanced inexorably forward, centering the entire Targaryen formation, with the Dothraki heavy horse on each flank, protecting their sides. A formidable position, one that could go toe-to-toe with anything Stannis Baratheon could throw at them. Across the plain of gently rolling hills and grassland were the walls of King's Landing. Nowhere near as formidable as those of Meereen, but impressive nonetheless. The Lion's Gate bristled with defensive structures prepared to withstand any sort of assault. But Jon Stark's intuition was proven correct as thousands upon thousands of men streamed out of it into an equally wide formation. Their plate and mail armor glinted in the sun. Warhorses kicking up a cloud of dust that partially obscured their lines and banners. Hardened men, the veterans of as many battles as that of Daenerys' army. Grey Worm was under no illusions that they would be a powerful and worthy opponent. No one should underestimate them. Unsullied halt. In a seamless ripple, the thousands planted their feet in the grass and moved no more. Their freedom never impacts their discipline one white. The Westerosi held a different martial tradition. Their infantry lines were in the rear, some spearmen but mostly sword or axe-wielding men at arms. In front were their heavy cavalry, armored knights with lances in the van, and any combination of melee weapons in the rearmost line, ready to crash through anything in their way from the sheer momentum of their charge. Those of the east needed to be ready to withstand those of the west. Always unflappable, now that he had something to lose, Grey Worm felt a rare tinge of fear. He did not like it, but it was unavoidable. Unsullied, front rank kneel. The line of hoplites complied, lowering to their knees. Present spears. With the rear three lines remaining at the reserve, stabilizing the ranks with their bodies and shields, the front three leveled their spears in a bristling hedgehog of death. Any horseman's worst nightmare. They would need it, for simultaneously the horns blew and the Stag King's knights began their inexorable advance. First at a slow walk, but then beginning to trot, building up their momentum. Whooping and shouting, streams of Dothraki mounted archers swept onto the battlefield from gaps within the line. Lightly armed and armored, they dashed about parallel to the advancing knights and unleashed streams of arrows. Damage was done. Slight damage, but enough to hurt. Such was the plan. Wear them down, keep them back until the killing blow was struck elsewhere. The knights began a gallop, but the Dothraki were swifter, unleashing a parting volley before streaming behind the heavier horsemen. "Hold, men," Grey Worm commanded, adding one last bit of encouragement. "Do not let them pass." They knew their orders, but they were men now, not soulless drones. Grey Worm would never expect them to be mere statues. He himself held in the second rank, spear leveled and ready to repel any attack. Gallop turned to charge as the horsemen surged forward, lances lowered into position. Hooves thundered and kicked up a large cloud of dust, something that would instill the deepest fear in all but the most hardened of men. The Unsullied were those men, and they had a sight on their side even more terrifying than 5,000 Westerosi knights. Its roar boomed across the entire plain to the city beyond. Drogon, the Queen's dragon, the Black Dread Reborn. Massive black wings bathed what seemed to be the entire field in shade, sweeping in low. A tongue of flame ignited the very sky, and Grey Worm noticed that the charge seemed to falter for a split second before continuing. Daenerys, her warbraid whipping behind her as she held Drogon's spines, hadn't killed a single man or horse in her attack run, but it had the desired effect. She ignited parts of the wall, covering them in flame while circling the city, bringing true terror to the forces of the Stag King. Jon's plan would be achieved if they could break without much bloodshed. Meeting the whites of the eyes of the knights, all Grey Worm had to do was hold. The first rays of the morning sun peeking over the bobbing horizon of Blackwater Bay made Jon curse under his breath. "Hurry the fuck up," he hissed back at the others. "We go fast as can," replied the guttural voice of Zagano, one of Dany's blood riders. He was the only one who spoke the common tongue. Some of it, anyway. There were others from among the Dothraki, 5 of whom joined him. Zagano and Ser Jorah in the small skiff, sliding unseen through the pre-dawn waters towards the Red Keep, which loomed large above them. So far, no sentry spotted a lone boat when the real threat to Stannis waded across the city on land, ready to storm the place. That was what Jon counted on, but fighting the currents of the bay set them back. If the sun exposed them, they were fucked. He groaned. For fuck's sake. "Jorah, stay on the tiller." "Aye, Lord Stark." Jorah replied as Jon grabbed an oar and started rowing hard. They were close to the cove. So close. Luckily, what little movement on the battlements above didn't spot them. There was no hue or cry, and the boat slammed into the sandy bottom of the beach with nary a sound not muffled by the crashing waves. "Quickly, quickly," Jon ordered in a raspy whisper. The men grabbing the boat's sides are using ropes to haul it up on the beach and then into the gaping maw of the cave's entrance, out of sight of the sentries, only for the roar of a great beast to halt them in place before they could advance inward. Even across the city, when Drogon roared, everyone heard it. "It started," Jorah murmured, his voice low. Zagano pounded his fist over his heart. "Khaleesi will bring death to her enemies." The other Dothraki grinned in zeal. Jon shook his head. "Death is what we're trying to prevent. Now hurry up." If they glared at him, he didn't care one whit. He'd endured impossible odds before and was not afraid. Legend had it that Maegor the Cruel killed every mason and laborer that carved the tunnels beneath the Red Keep so that only he would know its secrets. Most viewed the story as the cautionary tale of a paranoid, monstrous tyrant, but Jon saw it differently. A king who had seen his family attacked, then turned on him after years of brutal fighting to save the kingdom. Not a figure to be loved or honored, but to be understood and pitied. If it hadn't been for the love of Daenerys, of Aemon, of Arya, of the friends who supported him through it all, Jon couldn't say he wouldn't have fallen as Maegor did. Long ago, over hushed tones, hidden in secret, Jon and Davos discussed a secret entry to the city, one he had used often in his older days as a smuggler. At the time, Davos was worried for Princess Shireen's safety. He told Jon where the entrance was, in case if he ever needed it to get Shireen out. That wasn't exactly the case now, but Jon was using it all the same. Yet the winding, cavernous halls carved out of the rock promised a madness of its own to any who knew not where to go. Davos told Jon where it was, but certainly not how to navigate it. Brave Dothraki huddled close to each other from fear, separated from the open sky they grew up under. Jon himself swore under his breath more than once, trying to remember the directions given to him. The image of firelight bouncing off the dark, wet halls causes Jon to freeze. The dull thud of footfalls nearly made him curse out loud. He held his hand out to his right, halting all of them behind him. Why there would be anyone down in these tunnels, he didn't know. His immediate thought was Stannis stationed guards in the rare possibility of someone trying to sneak in. Just as he was trying to do, ironic enough, he hugged his body tight against the wall closest to him, crouching low. Jorah and the other mirrored him. He only heard the distant crackles and whips of the flames of this lone torch. The darkness didn't allow Jon to see it, but this path came to a T. The only light came from the outside from the opening they came through. Whoever it was, their path was nearly ending and would be faced directly to Jon and his compatriots pretty much immediately. His heart rate jumped up. Jon edged along close to the turn, pulling a small hunting knife out of his boot. So, at least he could kill whoever it was. The very second they turned the corner, he reached as far as he could without revealing himself. The footsteps were getting much, much closer. He steadied his breath, preparing himself. In the next few seconds, he glimpsed the legs of whoever it was. He took this as a signal to attack. Launching out, Jon tackled the individual, ramming his shoulder into the midsection as he brought them to the ground. His hand went over the nose and mouth, while his other hand quickly slashed the throat. Crashing down to the ground, blood splashed and spewed, and the torch bounced off the stone floor. "Whoa!" another voice called out, reverberating off the walls. Jon whipped back up as quickly as he could. The man's blood he killed caked his face and dripped into his eyes. He blinked and tried to wipe it away. The torch on the ground wasn't providing much light either. "Stop," the same voice said. Jon was able to actually listen to the voice now, and it was abundantly familiar. As soon as his vision cleared, he glimpsed the one and only Jaime Lannister, standing with his arms way up in the air, even taking time to pull his sword out and throw it to the ground. Jorah and the Dothraki turned the corner quickly, blades drawn. Jaime retreated. "Jon! It's me!" "Ho, wait," Jon ordered. Everyone stopped. Jorah growled. "Isn't that Jaime Lannister?" He actually waved his handless right arm. "Oh yes, it's me." "Jaime?" Jon scoffed. "What the fuck are you doing down here? I expect to see you still in a cage. I was going to free you." "Ah, that's mighty kind of you to say." Jaime dropped his arms. "But our mutual friend Davos Seaworth already did that." "Blast it all," Jon cursed. His eyes jumped over to the body at his feet, pointing his knife at it. "Who did I kill?" "I have no idea," Jaime said. "He was some guard leading me here, hoping I'd run into you. Or at least that's what Davos said. I unfortunately don't even know that man's name." Jon frowned and knelt. He used the end of his blade to flick the helm off of the guard. He wore the usual stag guardsman leather armor. His face was simple, standard, and unmemorable. but stuck in a countenance of utter surprise as the blood continued to flow out of his neck, even though he's long expired. "So, I killed this man for no reason." "An enemy," one of the Dothraki said, letting his spit fly in the direction of the body, then stuck his blade in the direction of Gami. "He is the same." "Leave him," Jon commanded. The Dothraki peered back at him, slightly seething, but did retreat. Jon sighed heavily and returned his knife to his boot. "What's done is done. We need to keep moving." "Right. Jaime began, reaching for his sword on the ground, but Zagano progressed on him quickly. Jaime froze again and yelled, "Gods damn it, I am on your side. Stannis had me in a cell." Jorah touched Zagano lightly. "Peace, brother. He is with us." Finally, Zagano calmed. Jaime grasped his blade and put it back in its sheath. Jorah hefted the still-burning torch off the ground. "Do you know the way back?" Jon asked Jaime. "Aye, I made sure to try and remember." Jon stepped up and took a deep, long breath. He put a hand on Jaime's shoulder. The two of them held eye contact. "I never thought I would trust a Lannister to watch my back, but I do trust you, Jaime Lannister." Yaxley did look genuinely taken off guard. His eyes dropped for a moment. Jorah watched them extremely wearily. However, he figured there must be a lot of events that Jon and Jaime had experienced unbeknownst to him. The Lannister brought his eyes back to Jameson's and said, "Thank you, Jameson. You did save my life. I will do all I can for you." Nodding firmly, Jon replied, "Good, now lead on. We must make for the Red Keep." Jaime exhaled and reached out for the torch. Jorah handed it over slowly. "Aye, follow me," he said, and with a shift turn, he walked away. Jon followed closely, but Jorah gripped his shoulder for a moment. With a whisper, he said, "Jon, are you sure about this? We may find our way on our own." "Yes, but that would take time we don't have, Ser Jorah," Jon nearly chided back. "Jon Muir's a friend. I trust him, as strange as that is to say. Now, come on." Pulling himself away, Jon caught up to Jaime quickly. Zagano and the Dothraki passed Jorah, all eyeing him. The old Mormont grimaced but trailed after, not wanting to be left in the dark. "Left. Damn you, left." "We turn left." "That's right, you idiot, left." Jaime stabbed in the other direction. "Gods, the Dragon Queen couldn't have gotten the eternal loyalty of the Golden Company." "Easy, Jaime," Jon barked, rolling his eyes. "Focus on the task at..." The tunnels started to tremble, bits of dust and pebbles sprinkling down about the group as the earth-shattering roar penetrated even the deepest bowels of the Red Keep. Jon felt the blood rushing from his face. "Drogon." "It's begun." Davos shook his head. "Seven hells, no." Zagano laughed, thumping the back of one of his comrades. "The Khaleesi rides into battle to finish this war. At least that's what it sounded like to Jon, being around them enough to piece together enough of their language. Gods, so many will die. She won't attack the city." Yaxley seemed to cling to that. Daenerys wouldn't want the symbolism of being her father, and if she'd do it, she'd have done it when Cersei was in charge. Jon nodded, and Jaime said it better than he could. "The small folk mayhaps, but Stannis' army..." Hooting, a Dothraki gestured in Davos's face. "Like dry grass." He made a blowing sound and mimed a large flame spreading. Zagano and the others laughed again, proud of Daenerys. Jon was proud of her too, but for different reasons. She wants as little bloodshed as possible, and the only way is to get to Stannis and convince him to surrender. He gestured them to continue, snaking through the tunnels built long ago by Maegor the Cruel. "Stannis won't surrender," Jaime said, breathing hard as they hurried. "He's too stubborn and thinks Daenerys broke the peace." "Daenerys thinks he did," replied Jorah. "But we'll accept a surrender." "Who did it?" Davos asked when they turned the corner. Ahead was an opening to the outside. "Bet on Baelish," Yaxley called as they ran towards the light. "Smells exactly like him." Why would he antagonize a woman with dragons? Or dragons in general? Jorah asked matter-of-factly, unless a thought came to Jon's mind. But it was premature. "We need to reach Stannis first. Until then, anything else was futile and a distraction." Bursting out into the light, chaos only greeted them. Scores of servants, guards, what have you were racing about, only some in any sense of order. "Oi!" A gold cloak moved to stop them, spear leveled, only for Ser Jorah to attempt to lop off the head with his blade. "Alarm! Alarm!" "Enough with that crock of shit!" Davos shoved himself between the two men. The gold cloak stilled. "Sir Davos," his eyes widened at the Dothraki, "what are you doing with these..." "Trying to end this fight without all of King's Landing dying," he snarled back, voice holding an undercurrent of desperation that Jon knew well. They all had it. Where's Stannis? He must be with her. Grace. A nod. Be on your way then. That's an order. The gold cloak stammered like a fish before taking the advice. Stannis will be in the royal apartments then. The holdfast. I know them well, Yaxley said. Follow me. Jon surmised the order in the Red Keep had devolved into pure confusion, for it wasn't until they reached the apartments on the third floor of Mygor's that a guard tried anything, and it was the personal Dornish bodyguard of the Queen. We seek entrance to see her, Grace, said Davos. I am Davos Seaworth. I don't care. His eyes flickered to the others, Kingslayer and Jon Stark, enemies to her Grace. Jon shook his head. Allies to peace, we need to speak with her. More discussion happened when the door opened to reveal Elia Sand. Let them in, Queen's orders. The guard didn't argue, passing aside, Lord Stark, Lady Sand. Jameson's eyes settled on Tyene, a hand over her growing swell as she watched the city spread out before her. The fires already stabbed up over the walls, while Drogon made a flyby on the fields just north of the old tourney grounds. Where is Stannis? Not here, she turned, her eyes rimmed with dark circles. Fear gripped her. Felt that if he weren't present here, then I would be safe, as would his 2 children. She again caressed her belly. Though I do not expect that he would ever wish to be cooped up in a castle while a battle raged anywhere. Davos nodded. Idea will seek to control the battle. Gate of the Gods? That faces Dany's army, Jon stated. It's as good a place as any for him to be, but it's on the other side of the city. We'll need horses. He looked at Tyene. Are there still horses in the stables? The Queen nodded. Some fast mares my entourage and I use. Take them. And hurry, she begged. I wish not for further blood to be spilled. Me neither, your grace. Jon looked at Elia Sand. Guard her with your life. Yes, my lord. He whistled, Men, with me. Once past the gates of the Red Keep, and astride the promised mounts, the air inside the city was feverish and chaotic. Townsfolk rushed by in countless numbers, many screaming and yelling. To make matters worse, they rush in opposite directions given that no one knows where it is truly safe. These people remember the many times the city has been sieged, the losses they suffered when a rival force tried to take the city. The problem became for them nowhere to go. Most recently, random spots utterly erupted with wildfire when Stannis came to take the throne. People who thought they were safe in their homes, suddenly ash and bone. Jon couldn't even imagine what that was like. And even heightened panic increased significantly when the dragons had been heard and seen in the air. Despite Dany's best efforts, the townsfolk couldn't find a way to not fear for their lives. The greasy black smoke, blown in a massive cloud over the walls by the eastward wind, didn't help matters. As if the Seven Hells once again opened into Aegon the Conqueror's city. With his party in tow, Jon attempted to push through the crowds away from the Red Keep, towards the heart of it all, the walls of King's Landing themselves, where he'd lose a father or his own life. Either way, a failure of some sort. Above, Drogon did another pass, and by the gods he did spot a speck of silver on his back. A kid reminder of what he fought for, of what he chose. Jon spurred his horse on, willing it to go faster. Thankfully, the people were forced to make way for him, and posse on horseback. Unless, that is, they wished to be trampled. Dracarys? Superheated air blasted against her face. Soot and greasy ash lightly sprinkled Daenerys' dress and face as Drogon blasted one of the towers of the King's Landing walls. Even above the roar of the wind and screech of her mount, the screams of a dozen defenders reached high in the sky, a knife stabbing deep under her armor at more innocent deaths. Mere pawns in the Game of Thrones. Gritting her teeth, she steeled herself for what was to come ahead. Drogon's wing beats gained altitude, outrunning the arrows arcing towards her and dodging the scorpion bolts that shot through the air. The sooner this was to be done, all of it could be done. Innocents spared. The ones that harmed Jon were punished. Daenerys had arrived over the battlefield not long after the mass of Dothraki and Unsullied slammed into their counterparts in the Stag King's army, attempting to circle across the field dried by drought and picked clean by a succession of marching armies. Just as she arrived, she found herself and Drogon beset by volleys of arrows and, most alarming, scorpion bolts. The secret weapons that had injured her mount during her battle with Jon at Duskendale dated to Cersei's day, but Stannis had marshaled them to the defense of King's Landing, hence the attacks on the battlements. Though each one destroyed, were followed by 2 more still in operation. Bolts shot at her in quick succession, Drogon diving steeply to avoid them. Although one wasn't enough to guarantee a dragon kill, Daenerys remembered the fate of her ancestor, of Meraxes. She was not going to take any chances with Drogon, for unlike Balerion or Vahagar, he was not large enough to shrink away such projectiles. By some miracle, Drogon managed to avoid the arrows and scorpion bolts, which resembled pikes in Daenerys' opinion. They were at least 10 feet in length, wooden shafts thick and eager to destroy her. One had come within an arm's length of her face, and she felt the wind rush from that. Faster! She gripped Drogon's spines tighter and gulped, nervous at how close that bolt was to making her like her namesake. But the quick rate of fire seemed to slacken. Whether they were out of bolts or seeking reloads didn't matter. Daenerys would take advantage. Deciding that it was time to strike back, she nudged Drogon in a tight turn before circling back and lining up just behind the last block of Stannis' infantry that had marched from the anchor of King's Landing's walls. The order came without hesitation, as it had hundreds of times before. "Dracarys!" Daenerys yelled out as Drogon unleashed a stream of dragonfire. It slammed into the dry ground, catching the grass and turning it into an inferno that divided the walls of the city from the clashing mass of men on both sides. Smoke rose in the air as the smell of burning flesh hit her nose, but not as pungent as she feared. Plenty of ground lay between the wall of flame and Stannis' men, the effect not killing them but trapping them. And the moment came. Daenerys could put it off no longer. The attack run, one she'd been waiting for. Unleashing Drogon's dragonfire upon the massed formations of Stannis' army, or at least the rearmost elements. Unengaged with her forces. But what men wouldn't break? Against the dragons, they all broke. Every army from the conquest would break as soon as the roaring flames were on them. The songs painted them as triumphs. The glorious dragon lords overwhelmed their enemies, and forging kingdoms and victories out of nothing, but with the wind slamming against her face, many braids of many victories whipping behind her, Daenerys could only feel shame as Drogon circled into place. No triumph. Just a sign of her failure. The failure to acquire a peace, even if Stannis had broken it, weighed on her. Her mind is at war with herself to come to terms with her guilt. It's not your fault. If I had done differently, you cannot fight the desire of others to wage war, to fight for their petty self-interest. Jon almost died. She closed her eyes, allowing a moment of the same fear and dread and pain to emerge from deep inside her before she buried it back down. I could have always done something. The challenging voice in her head shot back. If you look back, you are lost. Her own mantra. It finally brought a moment of calm to Daenerys as she readied to command what ate her alive. "Draka!" Drogon cut her off with a loud hoot. Not the earth-shattering bellow of the Black Dread Reborn while his blood was up, but a call, a warning to his rider. Daenerys tensed immediately, her head swiveling frantically in all directions. Was it another ballista? Some sort of threat? Instead, what she saw below, upon the ground, made her heart soar. Thousands upon thousands throwing down their arms, tossing them into the fires or onto the dusty plain below them. Stannis' men, from Crownlander to Stormlander to Reachman alike, were surrendering in droves, fighting strength sapped, morale fortressed by an unbroken chain of victories stretching from the freezing ice of the north to the golden fields of Highgarden, finally broken in the face of dragonfire. All knew of the Field of Fire. None wanted that infamous fate. Swooping above them, Drogon roared, laying claim to the battlefield. Smoke streaked out of his maw to scorch the sky above the surrendering men, undoubtedly terrifying them. But no fire lanced out, no more death, no more agony. It was over. Daenerys breathed a sigh of relief, finally letting herself smile. She had won. By the grace of the gods, she wasn't sure she believed in. She had finally won. No? Her smile faded. Not yet. While Stannis still roamed free, while he still breathed, there would be no peace. And only one sought to truly confront him. Jon. With a single mental command, Drogon roared again and banked for the city. The clash of steel upon steel, of the roar of thousands of hoofbeats, of smoke and flame, and the sounds of the most agonizing of deaths, were no stranger to Stannis Baratheon. After over 2 decades of war beginning when he was just on the cusp of manhood, too many battles to count as both a mere knight or subordinate to a king leading his armies on horseback with sword in hand, but the sheer amount this day was unprecedented. The final clash, the battle to end all battles, him versus the Dragon Queen. Out of the ashes of what he'd hoped would be the greatest act of peace and union in Westerosi history emerged the final clash of the War of the Three Monarchs. Cersei was long dead. He and Daenerys were left, and going into the morning, he was sure that one Stannis Baratheon would be the one to emerge from the carnage. It was prophesied, after all. However monumental the stakes, it was still just a battle. As soon as Daenerys' forces from the beetle-armored Unsullied, the savage Dothraki, and the few Westerosi from the Reach or Crownlands that had switched sides to her formed up, Stannis gave his orders. With protection from the ramparts and walls of King's Landing, the mass of tens of thousands of crack troops, men that had bled and killed with Stannis since Blackwater Bay all those years ago, would ape Jon Stark's tactic from Duskendale, to close quickly and mix with the enemy, using Daenerys' love for her men against her. Such hadn't worked for Jon, but the walls would anchor them. Deny Daenerys a chance to use her Dothraki to turn their flank. Jon would appreciate the irony, Stannis thought, wherever he was. Each thought of Jon Stark, of the man Stannis considered his son, made his fist clench in anger. His jaw tighten in frustration. A tear beat in his eye from sorrow that his son had chosen the Dragon Queen. Stannis had been betrayed before. This one, however, had wounded him deep. The army had marched out, if not in high spirits, but with a sense of determined confidence. The desire to win and end the war once and for all. Hours later, as the ash and smoke blanketed the sky as it had once before, such confidence had vaporized alongside thousands of his men. Stannis stared through the gap in the mantlets protected by soaked animal hides. Anyone else would have been horrified, but he was beyond that. A wall of flame extended across the entirety of the gate of the smaller sally ports that could have saved part of the army. The field of fire again, only from one direction rather than three. Daenerys hadn't torched his entire army like the unfortunate banners of Meryn Gardner and Loren Lannister, but trapping them worked just as well. Your Grace, he could hear Davos speak to him from over his shoulder. When had he shown up? Stannis asked that, but inwardly he was glad to hear Davos. The old sea smuggler's voice was loud, but simply to be heard over the din. His tone was comforting, gentle, as if Stannis' long-dead mother or Tyene murmuring soothing words as he tried to sleep. Many are surrendering. Stannis bristled. No, we can win this. They must simply break through. It's too late, Your Grace. Davos was right. Stannis could admit it. There was no way he could win this. And the odds of saving much of his army looked extremely slim, but he could, perhaps, if the Lord of Light be kind and willing, save himself and his family. But he couldn't move. Everything was just, how could it have happened? You need to flee, Your Grace, Edric begged, his bastard nephew shaking his shoulder as he simply stared at the sight before him. The smoke of the dragon fire stung his eyes, but Stannis couldn't bring himself to look away, even as it was getting thicker by the minute. There is no chance to escape, Davos replied. The Valyrians and Usse surround all of Blackwater Bay. We are trapped. It is over. There's still the Stormlands. Out home, we'll find a path. He is still the king. Edric had the certainty of youth, the fighting spirit. Robert had it, as did Renly. Stannis never did, however good he was at fighting. Other forces inspired him to fight, and yet they had failed him just as the spirit failed Robert and Renly. Are you mad? Davos's voice began to grow angry. There is no chance to retreat. The army will be captured completely in a matter of moments. Any boat sank by that dragon flying overhead. Edric seemed like he was spitting out all the words right as they hit his mind. Right, we can't retreat, he sighed, but his grace must flee. Stannis didn't look away from the madness. Already he could see the Caron banners giving up. Then the Estermonts. His own cousins flee? He replied dumbly, the words clearly not sinking in to get through to him. Refusing to tear away from the wall of flame, obstructing much of the battlefield, the destruction of all his plans and hopes. His body began to vibrate, or that's what it felt like for him. Fuming with fury, his heart thundered. His sword hand nearly ached, somehow upset at not being utilized. The young warrior in him, deep within him, urged Stannis to retaliate. Or at least fucking do something. He could hear Davos take a deep breath to calm his rising frustration. There is no chance, Your Grace. The Queen will grant you mercy, knowing you never commanded the arrow that hit Lord Stark. She'll never believe that, you old fool. Edric grabbed Stannis, turning him around. It's hopeless, Your Grace. We must regroup in the Stormlands. But Melisandre, the prophecy, a roar boomed across the landscape, the dark shape of the Dragon Queen's mount bathing the wall in its shadow. I was destined to be the prince who was promised, to bring the dawn. The prophecy could have meant anything. Davos shoved aside Edric. Spare the city, Your Grace. Spare your family. Stannis said nothing. Your Grace. Leave it, Davos. There's no point trying to convince him. Stannis' eyes widened, roused from his shock at the voice. He won't order the surrender. Both of them turned in the direction of the voice, face to face once more with the Lord of Winterfell. The hot wind blew from the battlefield beyond the walls into his face, covering his cheek with small patches of soot and ash. His hair wafted in tangled strands, only framing the grim expression on his face, one of determination, but also sadness. Jon and his company kept their swords sheathed, though they all had their hands ready to pull them free. Resignation. He had never wanted this, fought against it through all his might, but had made his choice. This became the final straw for the Stag King. The pent-up vibration exploded from his pores. He felt like maybe he could have spit fire like those fucking dragons. Seeing Jon again after what happened at the parlay, he just couldn't take it. Jon, he took one step forward, jaw so tightly clenched his teeth couldn't separate. Some unintelligible gnarly noises came from Stannis' mouth. "What has become of you, Stannis?" Jon's expression looked shocked, but filled with remorse. "You should surrender." "What's become of me?" Stannis bellowed, stopping his feet. "Jon fucking Stark would be Jon fucking Snow without me." He paced back and forth. "Have you forgotten what I've done for you? Has it lost its meaning to you? It never did for me." "No one believed in me more than you, Stannis," Jon did admit. "But I tried so hard to avoid this." He motioned to the ongoing battle. "You cost these people their lives." Stannis, locked into inaction and surprise for what seemed time interminable, finally roused himself and drew his blade, leveling it at Jon Stark. "You are a traitor. You dare show yourself here." "It's over, Stannis." There was the same resignation in Jon's voice. "No malice. Your army is trapped. No thanks to you." Spittle flew out from the king, his iron composure gone and left with the ancient Durandan fury that so defined his house. "And you come here to kill me, your king." A moment of softness, of sentimentality, flashed on Jon's face, a genuine affection Davos could see. "Is that what you want, Stannis? For me to kill you?" Stannis' grip tightened on his blade. "I may not be the man I once was, but I'll fight you." "You caused this, Jon. You could have stood at my side." The softness disappeared into something as hard as Valyrian steel. "That will never happen. Not now." "Of course not. We both know that," Stannis said. "You've made your choice, coming here even. Only one of us will stand at the end." Jon readied his position, looking back to Jaime behind him, who stepped up to say, "What are we doing here, Jon?" Finishing this. Another pause, to which no one spoke. Neither Stannis nor Jon. Neither Davos nor Sir Jaime. None of the guards. Only for Stannis to break the silence. "I saw you as the son I never had, Jon." Was that a tear in his eye? It was. Internally, Jon Snow from Castle Black all that time ago creeped back into Jon Stark's skin. The memories and feelings shuddered through his body. What it became of him after his bastard burden fell from his shoulders. Stannis gave him that. He felt hesitation and anguish wash over him. Jon closed his eyes and nodded. "And you were like a father to me. Then why did you betray me?" "Because I love her." No hesitation. "But I didn't want this. I wanted peace, only for someone close to you to break it. Your queen broke the peace." "If you thought about it long enough, Stannis," Jon exhaled, "you'd see someone who standed to gain way more, but the parlay falling through, but you're blind." Davos saw his chance. "Please, your grace, the Dragon Queen could have reduced our entire army to ash, but she didn't. Surrender, and we can find out who did break the truce and come out with as few deaths as possible." But with a flick of Stannis' wrist, Davos found himself facing a blade. "If you've helped him here, Davos, then you are as much a traitor as he is." Now Jon took a step forward. "This is between you and I, Stannis. Leave him out of it." He laughed at Jon. "No, this is the final fight over the Iron Throne, Jon, between the Dragon Queen and I, and you've made your choice." Sucking in a breath, Stannis made his choice. Kill them both. Davos could only watch in horror as Jon and Jaime Lannister drew their blades, just in time to parry the attacks from Stannis' Kingsguard.